So, first question to the panel I wanted to ask was, really open question really, what are the biggest challenges for measuring social right now, in your opinion? How's that, Lance? I mean,
the biggest challenge, in my experience, is education. If you are dealing with a 50-year-old CMO of a, say, B2B software company, and you go into his office and start talking about engagement and likes and shares and all the rest of that, he's going to, why is this relevant to me? What does this mean to me? Googs and I worked many years ago together at an agency where our biggest client was Sony Electronics, and I remember one day I went in to see the head of comms for Sony, and he was this old sort of military guy, and very sort of straightforward and serious. And I put together this what I thought was an amazing framework, which kind of linked together sort of social media, Twitter, and the activity that was going on there with traditional media, and it kind of drew a line between our outputs as a PR team and what was actually happening both, as I say, in traditional media and social media, and how it all tied together. And it was quite sort of intricate and sophisticated. I was very, very proud of what I'd done. And I sort of spent an hour running him through this, and he just looked at me like I was an idiot, because it made no sense whatsoever to him. He really wanted to know where I went wrong was just talking in our language rather than talking in his language.
right, talking about that.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, what about your perspective?
So I think from when I was at agency side, the biggest issue was always the education. As Lance said, it was trying to educate marketers who sometimes didn't understand how to sell it into the business. And also trying to get people to realise that this needs to come from top down if it's really going to work.
Right.
I think my biggest issue now in proving the success of social is that you don't get results immediately. It's a real hard one to show, I did this tweet and I've got a lead from it. It's part of an integrated mix. It's really hard to prove the ROI. So when you get challenged on budget, it's usually the first thing that goes, unfortunately.
Good, what about your perspective?
Yes, I think definitely from an education perspective that's really important. But I also think it's quite, like, brands nowadays just tending to see importance in digital but not necessarily understanding how much access that they need to give us. So for example, trying to get hold of brands like Google Analytics, or trying to think about how we can actually measure everything from the whole picture, so from the actual original tweet right down to the lead, like that whole process. So accessibility also comes into it.
And I mean, that leads on to my next question is, do you think B2B brands are still struggling, therefore, to convince internal stakeholders of the merits of social? Good, what about you?
I think they are. Like, it still tends to be a challenge. What you'll find is you'll get a mixed response. So you'll tend to have some people that have really good, strong understanding. You'll get others that don't. And often it's like how we can empower our clients to be able to feed back their results to the board. So typically our team will always define our reporting to make sure it's ready for everybody else. So never really ready for the client, because that's the person we'll always speak to and they'll have a good understanding. But typically it's the person they forward it on to that just won't get it.
Yeah.
So we always try to make sure that we cover off everything.
What about Michelle, from an internal perspective? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's still hard to try and sell it in. I'm a complete social advocate, and to try and get my sales team to engage in social and do it properly, it's a real challenge.
Well, so what sort of measures then, Lance, do you think people need to use to convince internal stakeholders? And does that differ from actually then running the programme?
The metrics I would recommend for convincing internal stakeholders to use social are profitability, customer retention, sales, lead gen. It is possible to draw a line between social activity and all of those traditional business metrics.
Right.
And if you're trying to convince these people, you've got to speak their language. So there is no point saying we got 500 likes on our blog post this month. It means nothing to them. It is possible to sort of take those digital social media type metrics that we will use and connect them to very real business metrics. It takes a bit of thinking and a bit of trial and error, and you need to get a lot of stakeholders sitting around the table to figure out how you're going to do it. But if you want to make it work, you kind of have to do that.
So what type of measures therefore? What sort of measures are working to convince them?
So typically now a lot of things come down to leads, because I think at the end of the day everyone wants to see an increase in sales. So whether that's from the B2B perspective or even even in the consumer space as well. It's not to say that's the only metric that they should be measuring. I think you have to get a balance where you're working with your clients to find out actually what it is that they want to achieve and making sure that we can apply the right metrics for them. Because there's no point kind of sitting there and saying, actually, we're driving all this traffic to your website, when actually, if traffic driving is not a key objective for them and that's not really something that they want, what they want is brand awareness and share of voice, then actually something else might be a different, more appropriate measure for them.
I agree with Doug's. What I've seen work is when you're when people will do it if it's related to their KPIs. So if all of a sudden a sales guy is told that you need to generate X conversations on social and you get X bonus, they'll do it. As soon as it's in there, as soon as it's an objective for them, as soon as they're bonused on it, it drives behaviour. And that's what I've found when I've been agency side working with clients. As soon as it's had buy-in from the top and it becomes key to what they measure as part of a KPI, adoption increases.
So at the beginning you talked a lot about education. Are you spending more of your time within, well, internally, but with clients, doing workshops and training people like sales and marketing teams on the value of social? Are you spending more and more time on that?
I am personally, yes.
Right.
So I've been doing it globally with our sales team. So, and we have a mixed response. Some of them think it's great, they see the value. Some are going to take a lot more convincing. And I think actually once they see the success that the few have, then we'll start to gain mass adoption. But we're starting small with the ones who want to do it and then building it from there.
What about you or Lance? Are you going in and doing workshops with clients?
When I was agency side, over the past 10 years, pretty much most of the work I've done as a social specialist in agencies has been running workshops and kind of teach-ins and those kind of sessions for clients. A, it's a good money spinner if you're an agency selling these training sessions, and B, that's still the stage that so many businesses are at. You know, they're kind of interested, they want to do it, but they just need convincing, and they need you to go in and train their sales team or, you know, train their board, just either very high level kind of conceptual, how the world's changed and what's possible, or real sort of nuts and bolts, how do you actually make this stuff work? And certainly at Sysmos, you know, half of the UK team are focused very much on client education, just training them, teaching them how to use the tool, showing them what the value is.
Right. So one of the, I mean, we're definitely seeing from our client pool a greater focus on lead gen, demand gen type marketing activities, PR activities. Do we think, how can social and digital support those more actively in moving forward?
So essentially, like, I think naturally from like a measurement perspective, because digital is so measurable, because we can always apply lots of metrics to it, it allows us to sort of define a program and work forward with it. From a PR perspective, like naturally because it works so well together, thinking about from an integration perspective, everything ties in so well. So typically, like, we'll always try and make sure the metrics are always relevant and apply to all of our clients.
Have you got any examples of maybe I can't name the clients, have you got any examples of how you're working with clients on lead gen programs using social and measuring that back to the client?
Yeah.
Lance, maybe you've got something on, but we'll start with.
You can.
Thanks. Yeah, so for example, the way it works at Sysmos is I'm the marketing guy. A lot of what I'm focused on is kind of content and more communications type stuff. So, you know, writing blog posts, white papers, that kind of stuff. But we know as a business, and any reasonably sophisticated business knows how much a lead is worth. So you know if you've got 100 leads, how many of them will convert, what each of those conversions is probably going to be worth to you as a business, so you've kind of got an average figure. So it's relatively straightforward for us to kind of measure the impact of social on that, because if I write a blog post that, I don't know, say gets 1,000 views, that maybe drives, let's say it's 100 shares, which then on Twitter and LinkedIn, and the sum total of those shares is, I don't know, something like a reach of 10,000 eyeballs, then we know that those 10,000 people, maybe 10% of them will come to the website and download a white paper, 5% of those people who downloaded the white paper will then go on to request a product demo. And there's this kind of complex chain of how all these people sort of move through our website and move through our sales funnel. But it is measurable. It is, you know, we just have to crunch the numbers. You know how one stage of the funnel leads on to the next, and roughly what percentage of people are going to move on to the next stage through the website. Where it gets complex is maybe a bunch of people read that blog post or read that white paper, then they go away and think about it for a month and come back and then request a product demo. Then it's kind of harder to follow that digital click trail that Goethe was talking about. And that's kind of where you need to just sort of stop making assumptions and do a bit of guesswork. But again, you can kind of estimate roughly how it's all connected.
I mean, we're seeing an increasing role of nurturing those leads, so they don't drop off.
Yeah.
But you have to nurture those and using analytics. I mean, Basware, do you see that, Michelle, in your business in terms of making sure that you may be doing some tweaks and all that sort of good stuff, but are you also involved in that nurturing process as well?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the measurement and then the nurturing, so I'm personally measured on new marketing leads, and then how many of those then go through to a sales accepted lead. So unless I can prove that from everything that I do, I'm not really bothered what you're doing. So I don't get asked what impact is social having. For me and for the team, social is just part of the integrated activity that then drives those new marketing leads. So yes, as marketers, we want to look at which tweets are best performing, what time of day, what channels are the best. Does LinkedIn produce better results than Facebook, etc., etc. We want that detail, but from the business's point of view, they don't really care so much as long as I'm delivering the new marketing leads and the sales accepted leads. Yeah. And they just see it all. I mean, we can't treat social on its own. It's just part of that integrated story. And as we're telling and trying to sell social in, it's just another channel. It's just another way that we can generate those things that we're being measured on. As part of the nurturing, we do try and capture now everybody's Twitter handles. We say run a webinar series and direct people to our LinkedIn group so that we can continue conversations and keep the polls going. So we're bringing it into everything that we do and trying to keep all of these contacts warm. But again, it's just part of other activity. We never really just treat it as a standalone thing.
Because I was going to ask you about the typical measures of success, but it seems that actually it just comes down to leads and driving the funnel. I mean, is that the main measure of success for you? Well, you've said that, but
we look at three things. So we look at traffic, kind of sentiment, behaviours, and then the kind of more hard metrics like leads and accepted leads and what have you. So from the things I care about, because that's what I'm bonused on, are the leads. But then I also recognise that it's not just about that. We also do need to be looking at how much traffic social is driving to the website. We need to be looking at who's engaging with us and whether we're actually speaking to influencers, whether our followers are relevant, because it's all well and good having 20,000 followers, but if 19,000 of those aren't relevant, then who cares? Yeah. So it's the engagement that I think is key. And then also the sentiment. So using tools like Sysmos, in the past we've looked at how we've shifted a brand from being talked about negatively to using social to change perception, and how then it's started to generate positive conversations. So that sentiment piece is quite interesting.
So there's brand awareness and sentiment, and then into the lead generation. Is that something that you've seen, Lance, as well in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're very big fans of people using our tools to sort of measure broader kind of things. I mean, the hard-headed, show me the numbers, how's this impacting the bottom line, that's not going away, and it's kind of essential to proving our value and the value of everybody who works in the social media team. But there are other things to consider as well. So things like customer retention, customer service. For example, if a customer has a bad experience on social, has a bad experience with your brand, and then they kind of engage with you via social, you've got an opportunity to fix it there. And if you're doing that well through social, then you've got a better chance of keeping that customer, stopping them from going away. And in the B2B world, you know, we're not talking about a £50 pair of trainers here. We're talking about maybe software worth hundreds of thousands of pounds a year. So reducing customer churn by using social media to have those better relationships, that does have a very, very real impact on the bottom line. But it's kind of more difficult to measure. You've made them feel good and you've made them feel better about a problem that might have gone really, really bad. It's kind of difficult to sort of pin, to prove exactly how that happened.
Yeah.
But common sense dictates that it's clearly a good thing to do.
Good. What about you? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, it really does depend on what the client's KPIs are. So we see like leads are again like really important. It tends to be one that pops up more and more often than not now. But even I guess like Michelle touched on sort of influencer relations as well. So that's kind of becoming quite an important part again for us, like thinking about finding the right contacts online and how we're engaging with them. So actually it's a longer sales process, like looking for that right lead, looking for brand advocates and looking for third-party people that are going to be talking about the brand genuinely, who then may turn into a lead. So it really depends on like what our clients need to achieve. So sometimes it might be a very specific set of people that they want to influence or have a relationship with. Sometimes it might be sales. Sometimes it might be brand sentiment. Crisis and customer service also comes into that. So it's thinking about like using the right metrics for the client. So I wouldn't say it's just all down to leads.
Okay. I mean, one of the things I was going to ask was, Michelle touched on how it's integrated. Some of the things we're seeing is it's still quite, some of this measurements is quite standalone. There's marketing measurements and social measurements and email measurements, and they're all sorts of disparate and all working sides. Is that a typical thing still, or is it not? Or are we actually starting to see integration across measurements? It's all part of a more integrated framework. But what are we seeing there? What's your experience? Google's, what's your experience?
We are. We tend to report in a very integrated fashion because typically I think you can't really see PR and social as being in silos anymore. So as everything becomes a lot more of a kind of big grey area, it's the additional importance for PR people to have a really good understanding of digital or how it can actually affect their PR campaigns mean that we have to sort of measure across a different range. So it's even things like working with AMEC, kind of looking at from a PR framework as well, but also thinking about how digital can feed into that. So let's say, for example, if you're selling in a press release, which would typically like if you were talking about a new product launch or something like that, actually it's not just the press release. You might want to think about the SEO benefits of that to see how much more prominent it can be in search, but then you also might want to think about what else you're providing through social, so whether that might be short form content like with video snippets or podcasts or anything else, like how all of those different elements will actually affect the success of that press release or the distribution of that piece of news.
Over recent years in agency life, I've kind of been quite disappointed with the way the clients approach it. That there really is no integration. Frequently we were asked to, as a PR agency, just give them a bunch of slides with press coverage and the outputs or outcomes of other activity. I would then get asked to add some slides onto the end of that with the social metrics, and that thing itself would then be tagged onto another deck from stuff from the rest of the marketing functions across an organisation. Not really joined up intelligently. It's just a bunch of nice slides that they can show at the board meeting. What's been refreshing about working in Sysomos is that it's very much a data-driven business. We sort of, we take our own medicine. And although it's painful, once a week I have to sit on a call with about 20 people from across the entire business, the digital guys, the content guys, the evangelists, everybody, and we get our heads together and we really talk about what we've been doing and how it's helped each other or what's not helped, and really kind of put together a sort of joined up, we have a joined up discussion on all the metrics and how they're interlinked. I'd love to see more businesses doing that.
Integration, yeah. One of the things is, is measurement of social typically historical? This is what we've done, aren't we great? Or is there an interesting shift also to say, oh, and by the way, telling them something forward-looking, more analytical, more insights moving forward as part of the measure? Is there anything there that you're seeing, or is it still historical? Groups, what about you?
With any kind of campaign, we have to typically put in all of the measurement techniques up front. So whilst we may report historically, we also have to kind of forecast how it will continue to behave. especially with say like paid campaigns, you might want to tweak and optimize how we're running our advertising. So we might want to kind of like think about how we can refresh that, which then means looking at how it's working in real time, whether it's being successful, and then amending accordingly. So you can report historically, but then at the same time you still need to be aware of what's happening right there and then as well. It really depends on what you're doing for the client, but typically I'd say we try to forecast, looking at what's going to happen, as well as kind of look backwards. And with the data that you get from an analytics perspective, you're able to do that.
I think what's also interesting, I completely agree with Googs. I think we're here talking about using social to actually run campaigns. I think, and I don't work for Sysomos and have no affiliation, but in the past I've actually used tools like Sysomos to generate insights from our audience. So looking into, say, what a marketing person is saying on Twitter and starting to understand their pain points. And I had a really interesting example where we would have run a campaign around a client's message, which was all about put your customer at the heart of everything, blah, 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 typical generic standard CRM type messaging. But actually using Sysomos, what we were finding was the marketing audience were talking about how they're always so busy and we don't have time to do everything, and it was this kind of time thing that became an issue. So we used that for the insight for our campaign and used that to help plan what we were going to do and send out and use. And I guess the point I'm making here is that we used social and conversations that were happening on social to generate a better campaign that we knew would generate better results in the future, and we were able to kind of predict that because we had these insights, the results were going to be better because we knew more about the audience than we did before. So it's just, I think it can be used in so many ways. It doesn't just have to be used to try and generate the results. It can be used to generate the insight, and then you use different channels to actually get the results.
Well, at the moment, as a business, we are very much about historical analysis. You know, one of the things we do very well is we capture everything. You know, everything that happens in social media comes into our database, and if you want to analyse, I don't know, how a competitor's campaign, for example, worked 6 months ago, or what people thought about a particular issue 12 months ago, you can use our tool to do that. And yeah, as these guys have both said, that's great, because then you can use that insight to sort of inform your future planning. Our vision, I say our vision, our new managing director's vision, where our business is heading, is doing a lot of that heavy lifting for you. We're kind of currently hiring some very, very smart PhD data scientists, deep learning analytics specialists, so that it won't always require a human to sit there and analyse that historical data. The machine will analyse the data and say, okay, well, I think if you want this particular campaign to work well for you in future, you might want to try these approaches or target this audience. So very much we see the future as using predictive analytics to help you guys figure out what's going to happen in the future based on whatever parameters you want to give it.
I mean, typically you set out measurements at the start of a campaign, but with digital it's obviously so fluid and it's so dynamic. You know, things pop up. Especially if it's all paid and you're tweaking it. But how is there an element of being people fixed and rigid to the program, saying actually we can't change this in real time because our measures this, these points, or is there actually a recognition with clients or with agencies that says, well, okay, this is the parameters are moving in real time because of whatever's going on. We have to change these measures and be adaptive and work with that, or is there still a no? This is it, can't change. What's your take on that? What's your take on that sort of point?
So usually the kind of main objective. So let's say, for example, if the main objective for a client was lead gen, that may be a KPI that doesn't change. But what I've been increasingly seeing is our clients coming to us and asking, can we have a look at, can we revise KPIs during the program? So even if we're on a retained basis, it would be like, can we look at them again in 3 months or 6 months? Often it will be because they're unsure about how something might be taken up, or if they're like a little bit unclear about what's most important for them. And when they're learning about digital at the same time as using it, suddenly they go, actually, maybe this could be important, or this would be useful to have. And usually it is kind of part of that education process. They learn more, they kind of almost want to see more. And if you give them all of that up front, it becomes a bit daunting and a bit confusing. You suddenly get a big report with lots of data in it, and you're like, I don't really know what to do with this. So it's just about kind of refining it. But I think the fundamental kind of main KPIs don't tend to change that much. But what you'll find is you get like a secondary layer, which will be a little bit more fluid.
Michelle?
We have the same, so my targets don't change, and for a lot of the time we can create a content plan for social that relates to the campaigns. I think the Oreo example is a great one when they jumped on the blackout at the NFL or Super Bowl, whichever one it was, but having that ability to be able to react to things that are happening and not just having a plan and sticking to it, but being able to adapt and change is really important.
Is there any difference in terms of measurement from paid and organic? And are there trends that you might want to share with the audience on that? Oops.
Yes, there are. I mean, naturally with like paid campaigns, especially through social, you get access to slightly different analytics, which means the information that you can get from that means that you can tend to refine the KPIs around specifically, like whether it might be reach for engagements or potentially leads or anything else. Completely depending on what type of paid campaign you're running, you can obviously look to identify the right KPIs that would be applicable for it. Whereas on an organic basis, you might want to sit there and think about how large our community might be, or how many pieces of content we're sharing. So, like for example, like where we've got models with our clients where they tend to be more, say, content generation focused, we might take a piece of content and think about how we can use it 5 different ways. And typically they want to see that we're maximising the content that they've been producing and using it across different channels appropriately. So that might be a measurement for organic, but actually for paid we might be able to be a little bit more specific about what it's generating.
I don't think I can add much to that other than, one of the key differences is quite obvious. If you're looking at paid, then most of the inbuilt analytics include the cost element, so you know what every click or every action has cost you at a very granular level, and you can sort of very easily figure out the ROI on that. With organic, of course, figuring out the exact cost of every click and every action to the business is slightly more complex.
So do we think, obviously you produce analytical tool, but do we think we're going to see an increasing need for more analytics skills within teams, more data scientists within agencies, well obviously in agencies, but with clients, you talk about it building into your business. Are we going to see that really ramp up in the next 12 months?
I would say if we reach a point where every business needs a data analyst, then we will have failed. Our job is to build tools that provide great insights and are easy to use. Sure, if you're a big business and you have a lot of data coming in and maybe you want to tie Sysmos data into stuff that's happening around your business, so stuff from your CRM system and your web analytics and all of these different sources of information. Sure. Yeah, great, you need strong analytics guys who can put all of that together. Smaller businesses where perhaps they don't want to do that, they just want to use individual tools to gain insight. Our job is to provide those tools that work. We should be hiring the data analysts and pairing them up with great developers to provide tools that just give you that insight without you having to be a super genius to get to that insight.
Yeah. Are there any shifts that we're seeing in social that the B2B brands are maybe still early days? I mean, one of the things, I was talking to someone earlier, they've got a big conference next week and seeing more maybe mobile use, using mobile technology, using that within social to zero in on people. Any perspectives on that?
Yeah, I mean, mobile's definitely a huge area for us. I mean, it's actually like mobile internet usage is overtaking desktop now. So we always have to think mobile first when it comes to any of our sort of digital content as a whole. We are starting to see, say, especially around things like events where we can kind of geo-target through mobile advertising and things like that. There's a huge opportunity for us to do more there. And naturally, like brands, as they get a stronger understanding of what's available to them, tend to kind of want to take that up. For example, like typically what most, I guess, marketers that will be kind of working with, they just won't understand what what options there are actually available. When you talk about certain advertising mechanics, or even say like mobile geo-targeting, they'll be like, didn't even know you could do that, which is great. So like actually it's kind of going back to that education piece, but thinking about how we can apply it to how social and digital are changing and evolving. So making sure we continue to educate our clients about what's out there and how they can apply it to their business.
And in terms, before we turn over to questions, my last question was, are there any channels that are priority for B2B brands? And you can think of the obvious ones, but are there any emerging channels or emerging trends within those established channels that B2B brands could make more use of in terms of their campaigns, and obviously how to measure them?
I think I've worked with so many different clients. The channel depends on which, who the audience is and where they are. I think you find a lot on LinkedIn, you find some prefer blogging. I struggle with the finance audience because not many of them are on Twitter/social generally. So yeah, I think it really does come down to the audience. There's definitely, we were talking before this kicked off, you're seeing a lot of brands using WhatsApp now, creating WhatsApp groups and getting influencers in those. Snapchat is obviously a latest fad, mainly among B2C, I think, but I've seen a few B2B brands starting to trial it. Even things like Periscope now, you're seeing this at most events. Who knows if it'll be around for a long time, or whether, again, it's just going to be another thing that comes and goes. But I think we're all trying these different channels, seeing if they work, and giving it a go.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. I think things like Periscope lends itself really well to a B2B brand, like just helping support events, and actually, especially when you think how small the borders are getting between like countries and locations, and how time poor typically our clients' audiences are getting as well. Like just thinking about how we can get content to them across different formats. So thinking about mobile around like WhatsApps or Snapchats or anything else that might be accessible via mobile for them. Like live streaming will obviously be important, like thinking about areas like that as well. And again, all of these tools tend to be really measurable. They tend to have all of the engagement mechanisms in there, so they're able to really communicate and engage with their audiences as well.
For us at the moment, we're thinking a lot about visual social media. The vast majority of content out there across a lot of channels are images and video, and that presents a big problem for a lot of brands because people don't tag their images properly, they don't write proper descriptions, so you've got all this stuff out there, all these pictures, all these videos, and you don't really know what's in them. And obviously they're exciting and engaging and interesting to the world because people are consuming them, but from an automated point of view, it's very difficult for us to figure out what's going on there. And if you'll forgive the shameless self-promotion, just this week we acquired a really interesting Indian company that gives us technology to automatically analyse that stuff. So we can now look at pictures on Twitter and on Instagram, and we've got this very clever piece of software now that will figure out what's in that picture. It will spot the logo, it will spot the people in that picture, whether it's a man or a woman, whether they're smiling, whether they're young, whether they're old, and everything else. So that's a big area for us.
So before, my last point would be, if you could just summarise what the future looks like for measuring social in a B2B world, what would it be? Maybe Michelle, what's your top thoughts?
I think it has to be about proving that you can generate leads from it ultimately. For me, it's prove that we can add value through social, which we do every single day.
Lars?
I was going to say that, but also, I think something we've all seen recently with the new Barcelona principles is that even offline, even in the traditional PR world, this nut has not been cracked entirely. There are still a lot of things that we're not quite clear on, and we're struggling to figure out how exactly to prove value. It's getting easier because of digital, but we just have to accept that perhaps some stuff can't always be linked, can't be measured scientifically in granular detail. I think we need to use common sense, and where things can be measured, where we have got nice click trails to pull data into spreadsheets and analyse, great, but we shouldn't lose sight of the common sense fact that some things are just good to do, even if we can't measure them in great scientific detail.
Great. Good.
I'd say data. It's going to be really data driven. Typically, like we're seeing clients become more savvy about what they're looking to measure. So often it won't be necessarily, just our tools that we'll be working with, but also the tools that they're starting to implement to measure things on their side. So I think as the data tool, like the tools that we work with, become more and more sophisticated, allow us to measure more. It gives us the opportunity to analyse that and make it more measurable. So, I definitely agree from the lead gen perspective with everything that Lance and Michelle has said, but I think data is going to be key for us.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to throw it open to you for questions. So who wants to be brave and go first? There we go.
We're talking about B2B. I currently work for a company that produces printers, which in the B2B market have a price tag of typically €20,000, something like that. I've worked previously for software companies where the typical sale value was a six-figure sum. One of the problems that I've hit before, and I'm still hitting, is we've talked a lot about data, but when you're talking about very high ticket items, it's quite hard to, what's the right word for it, have a statistically valid data set to work from. How would you recommend dealing with those high value, small niche products?
So that's what we are. I mean, our average deal size is close to 6 figures. So, and I've worked for the likes of IBM, SAP, so always very high ticket values. What Buzzword does really, really well is join up all of the systems. So our CRM, our social system, everything is linked. So from one single tweet, we can see right through where that goes, if that person then has interaction across any other campaigns, because everything is tracked. So we can see the impact of everything that we do. Other clients, it's been really, really, really hard. Like you say, it's just the time you have to put into getting somebody to sign a big deal is usually 6-12 months. It's not like B2C where we'll just go to the shop and buy something. So it's really hard if you don't have the systems in place and everything's not integrated, like your Eloquas, your CRMs, to be able to measure it and to prove the value from social. But we're so lucky at Buzzword that we've got all the right things in place to be able to track every single thing that goes out.
Anyone else want to add anything to that?
I'd say as well, just in terms of having a niche audience, in a way it works to your advantage through digital, because that's where we can help, say, target specific audiences through either paid campaigns and things like that. All of the social networks are becoming so much more sophisticated. They're giving us access to so much more of their data, and that means that we can target your audiences in a different way. It definitely, you do need to have the back end though. You do need to make sure everything's linked, because otherwise, by the time you've got, say, driving some potential buyer to a site, and after that process, other than us having a nurtured relationship with them, it's hard to then convert them. So almost by the time you've got them there, you need to know what that journey is from that point onwards.
Yeah. Does anyone in the audience want to share their experience?
I was going to ask a question.
Oh, you're going to ask a question.
Yeah.
Before you get there, anyone got any thoughts from the audience who maybe to help?
Can I just ask a supplemental question?
Okay.
The other half of my business is selling printers that cost about 45 quid that you can buy in Co-op. How do you cope with a range of products from mass market consumer to niche market systems, but you're all one company? How would you recommend getting?
I'd ask the question back, how do you sell them? So do you have two different sales models? Do you do the cheap ones online versus the higher end ones through a
we have
sales team?
multiple sales models, but we all work for the same company. So.
Yeah, but I think you then tailor your social strategy depending on which team it is. So the higher end ones, you'd probably work more closely with the sales team on how to nurture the leads, how to find them on social, how to go out and do things socially. Whereas the low end one, it's much more of a consumer sell, and for that it's about volume, which is where you probably put a lot of paid activity into that. Paid at the high end, not necessarily. It's more about the relationship. So that's, I think about how you actually sell, and then define your social strategy around that. Yeah.
You know, one of the ways our tool helps you analyse or find and analyse influencers on social media is through what we call our communities tool. And when we're looking for influencers, we don't just provide you a big list with some opaque algorithm behind it saying, okay, these guys are influential about printers and these guys aren't. We look at clusters and communities, and it's a little bit more complicated and it requires some training, but it's much, much more valuable, because what this enables you to do is take a look at social, the entire social sphere, and say, okay, well, I'm interested in people talking about whatever brand name is, I'm interested in people talking about printing or related issues. Then it will provide you with quite an interesting visualization of the different groups of people who are talking about those things, but around similar topics. So, you know, the kind of people who are interested in the £45 printer or are having problems with their printer at home and want a new one or whatever, and the people who are looking at it from a more commercial perspective and are looking for sort of high-end business solutions will be very distinct and very separate. So, you know, the tools exist to help you kind of figure out what's going on in social with those problems.
Great.
Yep.
Good thinking. Good. Yes, please.
Thinking about engagement, I'm struggling between marketing's role in social engagement versus sales' role in social engagement, and kind of how to structure that as I get the sales team working on it. Perhaps Michelle first, because I know there's a problem that deals with it.
Yeah, I have that issue too. And I think there is a line between sales think marketing should be doing it, marketing say sales should be doing it. The truth is we all have to do it.
Yeah.
So the way I've been working with our sales team, and admittedly I have to take some of it back off them because they don't necessarily do it correctly. We've been doing training sessions on these are the basics of social, like let's just get your profile set up and let's get them right. And then it's about actually all this content that we're generating in marketing, this is how you should be using it and this is how you can generate leads from it. And we've done probably about 4 or 5 different workshops with them. And what we're finding is doing it step by step, showing them, hang on, this is our role, we're creating content, yeah, we're promoting it on social, but we're not going out and connecting with people on LinkedIn, that's your job, it's just, and I think the biggest thing that they've realised, our sales team, is social's just another channel. I'm not saying stop doing your calling or stop going to events or stop doing all the other things that you normally do, but it's another way to get in front of somebody that you can't get in touch with. So we've got a group that we've set up, they're actively engaged in it now, they've realised that there's some big names in there that they really want to get in front of, and we're giving them kind of tips and tricks to do it. So as soon as they can see that these people are engaging with them all of a sudden, then they see it as just another channel that they can go out and do it. But it's hard, it's not easy. We've done training with Cisco, we've done it with BT, I've done it with a lot of companies, and you need to find someone who advocates it first and use them to show the benefits to the other people who then slowly start to do it.
So marketing sort of provides the framework, the content,
yeah,
the groups, the hosts the environment to a certain extent, and then but get sales to actually do the one-on-one piece.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, so recently we've been working on quite a lot of, say, like policy documents for some financial services brands. And again, like, they tend to be quite heavily regulated, and I think for them, their biggest fear is the sales guys, because they just don't know what they're going to say. And naturally, the way that sales guys approach like any of their channels, it's like the hard sell. So it is the kind of education part to show them what marketing can do. Because what you end up finding is that the teams don't really respect each other, because marketing guys have a perception of sales, and there's sales guys have a perception of marketing guys. But actually, what Michelle's saying, like, making them understand how marketing can actually help them sell, or how they can use the content that you're producing from a marketing perspective across their sales channels, and what that can do for them, and giving them that greater awareness definitely helps, because you just need that buy-in from them. And as soon as they understand that, then it sort of changes the way who has the ownership of it and how they can use something.
If I may add just a point as well, Matt, I shouldn't, but I will. I think it's also everyone sells, right? We're selling, but the sales teams generally don't think they need to market. And with the rise of social selling, we're doing loads of work with the clients on training on social selling to tell them, this is another, to the panel's point around it's another channel, but embrace that it's not necessarily all the old ways of doing it is best, because the cost per lead from social selling, LinkedIn will provide you all the data points, but they'll tell you that cost per lead, because they can zero in on people, is much lower than rocking up to conferences and email programs or whatever it is. So social selling is definitely a program that we are seeing a lot more both here, and we've got a US colleague in the room as well. They're seeing a lot of that type of trying to get sales guys into social selling. It's a more cost-effective mechanism. That's what Michelle was doing.
A great way we actually did it. So I find it really hard to get the sales guys to want to do it. But one of the things we did when I was working with SAP was do their partner social selling program. And that was actually a lot easier to use the partner channel to try and do it. So we actually did a whole kind of gamification league table, and it was really cool. We had like a series of 10 different webinars for them, training them up from the basics through to some more complicated stuff. They used to have to send evidence of the tasks, and we created a little league so that every time somebody sent a task through, they could see kind of in real time where they were in the league. And then actually they got some MDF funding from SAP to then go and do something like create a piece of content, create a video, do whatever they wanted with. So we actually incentivized it and had this kind of gamification element, which really increased the uptake from partners to do social selling for us.
I ran a social selling training program for IBM over the course of a couple of years, again in a former life, and they were quite progressive about it. They sort of realised, about 5 years ago that there was something in this. And the problem IBM had is they've got all of these consultants, these frontline IT sales guys, just covering every conceivable industrial niche you can imagine, public sector, private sector, you name it. And they can't afford to PR every single one of those niches. They can't afford to do marketing for every single one of those niches. So they had the idea of, let's get the sales guys to do it themselves. And the way we tackled that was we put together a two-day training program, and on the first day we didn't touch social at all. We didn't mention Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything like that. We sat all the sales guys down and said, okay, well, look, you tell me what you're an expert in. And the first thing they all did was say, I'm not an expert, I sell technology, I'm a consultant, I'm not an expert. But then you got talking to them and said, okay, well, what kind of technology do you sell? Analytics or clouds or whatever. Fine, and what industry do you sell in? Okay, insurance in the London market. And you get them out of their shell, and suddenly they realise that they absolutely are experts in a very focused area. And then you kind of have to convince them that that knowledge, that specialist know-how they have, is valuable to people beyond their sales contacts. Then on the second day, once we convince them that they are experts, they do have valuable knowledge, then on the second day of the training program, we say, okay, great, you've got this knowledge, we've agreed that there are people out there who would be interested to hear what you've got to say, here's how you take it to the audience, and then we get to the nuts and bolts of LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that. And they had mixed success, but enough success stories to make it worthwhile.
That's very interesting. Questions? Oh.
Got a question from Periscope.
We'll get there, Dina.
Sorry, Dean. Do you think social has a place in ABM? So account-based marketing, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done so many account-based marketing campaigns, and I actually think there's a whole other discussion you could have around what is account-based marketing. I think true account-based marketing, and you see it at companies where they literally just have one team focused on one client doing one program, and that is what they do. Yeah, I mean, you can nurture that group, you can get them following you on social, you can use social to do all sorts with them. One of the other kind of account-based marketing campaigns we used to do is when it's a very targeted group of, say, 5 companies within a certain sector. One of the examples I had, again, for SAP, was when we went after 5 energy retailers, and the idea was that we wanted them all to sign up their own kind of personalised microsites, and then there was a ton of different content on those microsites, so we got people registered on the sites. And then we use that site as a blogging platform over the next few months. So every week we put a new blog on about smart metering and that particular topic. We'd use that blog to get people there. So rather than actually going out to a site that already existed, like a LinkedIn, we created our own little groups for that company to come on and discuss on that blog. So yeah, I think it can play a massive role in account-based marketing.
Anyone else got anything to add? No? Dean, you can ask a question. I know you're sitting there waiting.
No. So we talk a lot about sort of data science, data scientists and so on. I think one of the challenges I see with the maturity around measurement in social media is that from a science perspective, measurement is about identifying how you can replicate the same result over and over again. And I was just interested in your views around the shift from, say, marketing, where you can do quite advanced A/B testing, and say with advertising, how you see that progressing in the social media space, and whether at the moment we're too focused on proving what we've done worked rather than using it to replicate the same result over and over again.
Question. Lance, would you like to say that one?
I was hoping I'd have some time to think about that. I think, yeah, you know, as you say, marketing, especially online marketing, they've been great at this for a long time. You know, they must sit and look at us in PR and sort of the fluffy side of the marketing industry and laugh their heads off at the way we tie ourselves up in knots over measurement, because to them it just happens, it's built into what they do. They've got the tools, everything can be tracked in granular detail, and for the reasons we've discussed earlier, it's traditionally been quite difficult for PR to prove value of what it does. I mean, what the industry's 100 years old now or something. We've been around for a while, and when I got into this business 10 years ago, I was amazed that at that point they were still arguing about how we measure it, how we prove the value, having been around for so long. But yeah, because of the shift online, as Doug said earlier, because we're doing so much more through these social and digital channels, we now have all these cool tools available to us. We have all these analytics, and we can track a lot more of what we do. And the unknown space, the part of what we do that we can't measure very accurately, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I think it's always going to be there, because when you're looking at sort of nebulous, esoteric concepts like influence and reputation, you just have to accept that some of that's gut feel. But because we are shifting to this online world, we're doing much more online, then absolutely, yeah, I think there's no reason on earth why we shouldn't be looking at things like A/B testing and all these tools that traditionally online marketers and those guys would have available to them. So absolutely, and I hope the development team at Sysmos is looking very closely at how we build that functionality into our own platform.
I find this concept of the kind of data analyst and data scientist quite interesting, because when I've come across them, they're not marketers. And we have a few in our business, and it's interesting because they're great with data, they can do all these fantastic things, but the insights aren't there when you get it from them. So actually to have that kind of tool that you can then, it's less time about going on into the insights and trying to work things out, just to have a tool that does it, and then you as a marketer can come up with your own interpretation and start testing things, and I think it's quite interesting.
That's a very interesting point.